This photo, posted on Snapchat Wednesday, was the last time anyone heard from 24-year-old Sydney Loofe.
Sydney Loofe.
As of Sydney Loofe.
Sydney Loofe.
She texted me and told me about the date she had went on the night before with this gal and how great it went, and she was excited to go on a date with her again.
Jealousy is such a strange enemy, I know. It's all in my head, but I can see it's standing in doorways down the street, alone.
Just a quick warning, this video will contain explicit and sexual content. The video will tell some gruesome details about murder victims and crimes committed by a very disturbed individual. This is not a topic that can be treated lightly, and as such, viewer discretion is advised.
Good morning, everyone. It's Lady Curious. How has everyone been? I hope you have been safe and well. I will say that I will not regret anything that I say today. Some things need to be said. Find the truth and no apologies. I do have merch out, new merch on bonfire.com. I will link everything down below so you can go check it out. It's brand new dials, so I hope you like them. Go check it out. I also have them on spreadshirt.com under curiousraven. You will also find them there. Remember, everything in this video is for educational and documentary purposes only. I'm here to tell the truth and nothing but the truth to the best of my ability. I have researched and researched. This case is not as detailed as my Jason Fox case. I've tried to find videos of Sydney and I could not find any. I even reached out to the family and I haven't heard anything back. But I understand some people just want to be left alone. In this case, is so huge in the YouTube true crime community that they probably have been pestered so much and they've probably seen so many videos, and that's the best I can do. I want to be respectful. So remember, be respectful in the comments. The family members of these loved ones, they can stumble across this video and see what you write. Wish them love and support and say nice things to each other. I always love reading my comments and I try to get back to you as soon as possible. So tell me what you think about this case. I'm pretty sure you heard about it. This was requested by a subscriber. Usually I do cases that are not in the media that much, but like I said, this was a special request. I'm gonna get angry in this video. The two monsters that did this to her, they both should have got the death penalty. This girl was preyed upon, had no idea what was going to happen to her. She was just completely blindsided. I think everyone was. Tinder and online dating sites like POF, Craigslist, Grindr. I'm pretty sure there's many, many more, but I'm a married woman and I don't keep up with that stuff anymore. They're dangerous. Completely and utterly dangerous. You have no idea who is on the other side of the keyboard. Even if you meet them in person, I'm not gonna lie. In my late 20s, before I got married, and I went through that phase where I was on POF and I had my own apartment and I was going on dates and sometimes inviting people over, and just, it could have ended badly like this did. And Sydney, she took all the precautions that you can. She took every single one of them. Remember, be nice in the comments, show love and support, find the truth, no apologies. Let's get into this video. Online dating is becoming the norm for every single day use for singles that are trying to find love and even sexual encounter. Meeting strangers online, a dark outlier of danger and chancing becoming prey for sadistic monsters. That's the only mistake Sydney Loofe made, was meeting someone offline. She lost her life just trying to find love. That is the most unfair and devastating thing I've ever heard. Sydney went on a date, a Tinder date, met this beautiful girl. Did I forget to mention that Sydney did not have the taste for men? She was a beautiful young woman that loved the beautiful ladies. And there is nothing wrong with that. You love who you love. Let people live their lives how they want to live them. Sydney Irene Loofe was born on August 21st, 1993. In Broken Bow, Nebraska, raised in Arcadia by her parents George and Susie Loofe. Sydney and her family moved to Neely around 2000. Growing up, she loved sledding and bike riding. Her older brother said she wanted to hang with the boys of the family and wanted to do everything he wanted to do. She was very close with her siblings. She was known for her skilled fishing, and her family said she could almost outfish all of them. Sydney was very athletic. She played basketball and golf while she was in school, but then unfortunately she developed scoliosis as a teenager, and that hindered her from playing many sports. After graduating Neely Oakdale High School in 2011, she worked at her local Menards hardware store. It's kind of like a Home Depot, if you want to say, or an Ace Hardware, if you're not from the North, because I've never been in a Menards myself. She lived by herself and had a cat named Mimsy that she absolutely adored. Susie, her mother, recounted her daughter suffering from anxiety and major depression. Merely days before her disappearance, Sydney discussed that her depression and mental health was worsening, and her family said that they would help her out, and if she needed them to go with her to the doctor, they would, and they did. Sydney was on antidepressants trying to get some help. It was also said Sydney hated cleaning. And when you're depressed, it's hard to clean. I struggle with it every day. So her friends and family would come over and help her clean. She just hated it. Like me, I hate doing dishes. Her first date, she would text her friends and say, "Oh my gosh, I met this beautiful girl and she's really cool." And you could tell she was super excited about this girl she met on Tinder. And she just had a glow around her. The next day, she was going to meet the woman again. And her friends said that she did a Snapchat. Sydney was huge about Snapchat. And she sent her a snap smiling and saying, "Ready for my date." And her friends just was happy that she was out dating. She really had some bad experiences with online dating. Like, it was stated that she would go and meet up with a female and get to know them. And then all of a sudden, the female was like, "Oh, hey, I do have a boyfriend, maybe a three-way." And Sydney was sick of it. She's like, "I just want one person. I don't want anyone else." And a lot of times, these females had boyfriends. And she's like, "I'm not into the D." She even stated, as she was going on a date with this woman, "Oh man, I hope she doesn't have a boyfriend." I didn't even ask her that because she was paranoid. Because she was worried that she would get on this date with this girl that all of a sudden, a guy would just come out of nowhere and she'd be like, "Oh, hey, yeah, I got a boyfriend," And she even texted this woman, "It is just going to be us, right? Us two on this date? That's it?" And she texted back and said, "Yes, just us two." Sydney had a older brother and a little younger sister. You can tell by the pictures that I will post that she was very close to her younger sister. They were like best friends. Her mom and dad loved her so much. This is what happened to Sydney. She met a woman on Tinder in 2017 named Audrey. But what Sydney did not know that Audrey was not this woman's real name. It was an alias. Her real name was Bailey Boswell. November 14th, 2017, she met Bailey on the Tinder app and she went on a first date. They rode around town and smoked some weed and just hung out, just them two. And Sydney seemed like she really thought Bailey was cool and she liked her vibe, and she said she was gorgeous and she was really excited to see what went into the future with this woman. Sydney asked Bailey twice if they will be the only people at the date, to which Bailey responded yes. She affirmed it. Sydney even texted a friend, "I hope she doesn't have a boyfriend. I didn't ask." Sydney asked this because of the past issues I told you earlier. The first date went well because one of Sydney's friends recounted her telling them she had just met an amazing down-to-earth girl. On November 15th, 2017, Sydney left work for a second Tinder date. The date was held in the basement apartment of Bailey. Before heading to her date, Sydney posted a Snapchat image captioned, "Ready for my date." Cell tower data showed, and Sydney's phone last pinged in Wilbur before the phone shut off at 8:32 p.m. that night. Bailey recounted that they just smoked some weed and that ended up actually gifting some pot to Sydney before she took Sydney to one of Sydney's friend's house because Sydney did not drive to the date. Bailey came and picked her up and they drove back to Bailey's together. Unfortunately, something was terribly wrong because the next day, the 16th, no one had heard from Sydney. She didn't show up to work, and that was not normal at all. Sydney was a hard worker, very dedicated, didn't matter what job it was. And even her coworker, her boss, called her mom and said, "Hey, I can't get a hold of Sydney. I don't know what's going on. She didn't show up for her shift." So that day, her mom drove out to Sydney's apartment and she knew something was terribly wrong because Mimsy was left at the apartment by themselves, unfed. And they said Sydney loved her cat. She would never abandon her cat like that. And they seen her SUV that was parked in the driveway, but no signs of Sydney at all. Nothing seemed strange at the house. Nothing was awry. Nothing seemed off. And they kept trying to contact her and they couldn't get a hold of her. Her mother then filed a missing persons report on Sydney. It would not be until a couple weeks later, close to 3 weeks, on December 4th, that they located Sydney's body 60 miles from Bailey's apartment, and all of her close friends and family's nightmares were becoming a reality. This turned from a missing persons case into a murder-homicide case from here on. Bailey Marie Boswell was raised in Leon, Iowa. She was an infant when her biological father was murdered. She excelled at school athletics, topping the list of the fastest runners on her relay team and scoring dozens of points in basketball games. She was offered a scholarship to play college basketball. However, she turned to substance abuse after her graduation. Bailey was being cited $400 for possession of recreational drug paraphernalia. Bailey was a mom. She had one daughter, and she had this daughter when she was married to Freddie Pennell. Bailey's mother, Priscilla, recounted that Pennell and Bailey's relationship was physically, emotionally, and sexually abusive. Pennell had a drug addiction that led authorities to revoke the parents' custody of their school-aged daughter. According to Priscilla, Pennell also beat up a pregnant Bailey before kicking her face. Priscilla went on to discuss Bailey's move to Princeton, Iowa, and her unsuccessful plan to rebuild her life. The prosecutor claimed that Bailey sought out Aubrey Trail on the now defunct Marketplace backpage, alleging that she was looking for a sugar daddy. Bailey is a much younger than Aubrey and ended up in a relationship with him after moving to Princeton, Iowa, for a fresh start. Bailey did not have custody of her daughter anymore. Now, Aubrey Clifton Trail endured a difficult childhood. At the age of 2, he was abused by his parents before his grandfather took care of him. Only time separated Aubrey from returning to his parents' household, where he was again abused by his stepfather. He grew up in poverty, moving steadily from one foster home and juvenile facility to another, before landing in prison as a teenager for armed robbery. These two people, Bailey and Aubrey, are the monsters of this story today. This is really the only little tidbit that I found of them, but I wasn't going to search because I don't like to make my videos be about the suspects, the criminals, the monsters, the pieces of shit that do bad things to hurt other people. I want to make light and remember the victims. I want to give voice to the victims. People say that in studies, that if you are brought up into this type of childhood or have a criminal past, it just seems like you don't turn out to be a great adult in the future. That's my opinion, but hey, I'm not giving them any excuses. Zero. So at this point, Sydney's missing, okay? She was missing for like 3 weeks. They could not find her whatsoever. But the family just did everything they could. They were on TV trying to get the word out. They were on social media. They were putting up flyers. They were putting up ribbons. The community came in. They were doing huge searches for Sydney. This was a small community. So this rocked this town so bad. Like terror of who and where did she go? I will say the police did an excellent job. They did everything they could to find Sydney. A lot of times you see in a lot of these cases where the police just do not do an adequate investigation. They nailed these fuckers to the wall. I'm happy that Sydney got some type of justice. There are lots of twists and turns in this story. I will be talking about sexual abuse, sexual violence, some crazy sex cults, and just buckle up. It took me for a loop. I'm like, what? I didn't know all this stuff about this case. The investigation started with a search for Sydney after authorities failed to find Sydney during a welfare check. Because, her mother was like, my daughter's missing and I cannot find her. So they did that initial check. Personal items she may need, however, remained in her residence. This included her purse and glasses and her car and her cats, like her whole life. To me, the real MVP of this story is one of Sydney's co-workers/friends. Her name was Brooklyn McChrystal. She remembers Sydney showing her the picture of Bailey and told her name, was Audrey. That was the little alias Bailey was using. She got on Tinder. Did not even tell anyone she was doing this. Put her own profile up. Swiped and swiped and swiped and swiped. Hours and hours, days and days. Until she found Bailey. And when she, swiped or whatever, they were a match. And she actually started kind of talking to Bailey, and Bailey gave her phone number. Ha ha ha. So Brooklyn went to the police with all this information. That is amazing. Like, she did her own undercover investigation to help find her friend. The Celina County Police Department made 2 visits to the basement apartment rented by Bailey and Aubrey, because once she gave this information to police, they found out the real identity of Audrey, and it was Bailey Boswell. Then they found where Bailey Boswell lived. And at that time, she only had been living at that apartment for not even 6 months. The first was a welfare check, since the final ping from Sydney's phone came from the address. Additionally, it was strange for Bailey and Aubrey to have an air conditioner on in a cold month of November. The landlord felt this was weird. When the police got there and started poking around, the landlord's like, look, it's odd. They've been gone for a week or so or whatever, and their air conditioner has been on full blast. And it's November in the north. It's very cold, so why would they do that? Well, we all know why they did that. They wanted to air out any type of smells. And the landlord told them it smelled like bleach so bad that people in her home were throwing up because the bleach smell was so bad and they had a reaction to it. That blows my mind. She just thought they were cleaning, I guess. I don't know. They knocked Bailey and Aubrey's door, but no answer. Using the landlord's key, the police entered the apartment, but the only thing that caught their attention was the pungent smell of bleach, like the landlord said. The next day, police came ready with the search warrant, but again, nothing was out of the ordinary. And the basement looked exactly the same as the day before. Bailey and Aubrey became persons of interest on November 28, 2017. When they did a search, more than one search in the basement, they started finding things that kind of made them go, A dog leash. Well, the couple didn't own a dog. Duct tape, a sauna suit with a crotch cut out, zip ties, a hatchet, a plastic drop cloth smeared with blood, and a book on anatomy. They thought that was so weird. Bailey and Aubrey weren't nowhere to be found. Well, this was the last place Sydney was, and now these people are just ran off and we have no idea where they are. Maybe they're trying to run. So the police were asking everybody and their mama, literally their parents, where they were. And this got back to them. So what this disgusting couple did. And when this happened in real time, y'all, I remember seeing this video on Facebook. And I was like, God, these people are fucking weird. Like, The couple responded to this declaration by making a Facebook live stream, defending themselves and maintaining their innocence. Bailey claimed that the dates involved her and Sydney driving the car around and smoking weed, and that following the second date, Bailey drove Sydney to a friend's home. And what was Bailey's last sighting of Sydney? Aubrey can be heard praying for Sydney to be found safe soon. I hope you can hear just my sarcasm. On November 30th, Bailey and Aubrey, and in this video, they just kept saying, "Oh, we hope her family finds her. We are so sorry for the family. We have no idea." And like a little allegations, you know, because the media runs with everything. And so does everyone else. When shit like this goes down, people are gonna assume, you know, and go, hey, we were gonna ask questions. I'm guessing little Trill did not like those questions. And he was like, well, I'm no murderer. I know I'm a criminal. I've stolen. I've robbed. I've done this and this and this. This is what he proclaimed in this video, y'all. And I'm just sitting here like, what the fuck? And after I know what I know, and I watched that video back, I'm like, you motherfucker. That's what I wanted to say. I wanted to just reach out and just knock his teeth out.
Good morning, Lincoln and Omaha and probably several other places. This is Aubrey Trail and this is Bailey Boswell. I guess y'all also know her as Audrey. But we've spent the last few days watching ourselves being slammed and crucified in the newspapers and the news and everything else, so we thought it was time we had our say. We're not trying to defend anything. We're not trying to make you believe anything. We just feel we should get to say our side since everyone else gets to say theirs. Unlike the Lincoln Police Department and Celina County Police Department and all those folks, everything we're going to tell you, you're going to be able to pick up the phone or have a newspaper pick up the phone and very easily verify it. I am going to talk for a minute, then Bailey here is going to tell you about her 2 dates with Sydney, and we'll go from there. The Lincoln Police Department apparently wants everyone to believe that we're hiding, that we haven't talked to them, that we're avoiding them. Actually, we've spoken to the Lincoln Police Department a couple of times. We also, through my attorney, Doug Mertz in Falls City, Nebraska, please verify, we both wrote long statements and sent to the Lincoln Police Department telling them everything we know. We also, the day before Thanksgiving, which would be the 22nd, we repeatedly called the Lincoln Police Department when they were trying to contact us. After about 10 phone calls, please have a newspaper, ask for they record everything. We were told to quit blowing up their phone, even though we told them, hey, do you understand that we're the people you're looking for? They said, you've called here several times. We will get back to you when we can. So that's how that went. They're telling you that they have all these leads, that Sydney was last seen in Wilbur and such. What they're not telling you is that we are the 2 people who gave them all these leads. I called the Falls City Police Department because they went to my ex's house and looking for me, so I called to find out what was going on. Apparently they did not know my address in Wilbur. They thought I still lived in Falls City. I talked to the sergeant there. I told him what my address was in Wilbur. That night they went to my house and searched our house. We found out that on the 21st, I think it was, or the 20th, the county attorney in Wilbur, Celina County, filed a warrant against me for possession of a firearm, which is insane. I have never owned a firearm in 20 years. The next day, according to the papers, the warrant was withdrawn, but the Lincoln paper is not telling you that the warrant was withdrawn because there was no firearm in my house. But they will have you believe that. Several other things. I guess the FBI and the U.S. Marshals and all that good stuff, and a lot of other people with a lot of initials that I have no idea what means, is is investigating, looking for us or whatever. We were at our house 4 days ago. No one showed up. We were in Wilbur. We've been to Wilbur twice. We have a young lady with us for a week, which is Bailey's sometimes girlfriend. The Omaha police started calling her phone, telling her pretty much that she's in danger with us. So we took her home the day before Thanksgiving. She was with us when Bailey and I were trying to call the Lincoln Police Department. She can verify this if you want her name. I guess friend us and messages on Facebook, because as we know stuff, you will know stuff, because we're not cutting, editing, or anything. If we make a slip on this video and say something that you find incriminating, please let us know. And you've already crucified us in the newspapers. You've already crucified us on Facebook. In America, I sure thought it was a trial first, but I guess not. You've heard all of this stuff about my criminal history. All true. Been convicted of bad checks and forgery and all that good stuff, but never been convicted of anything like, I guess I'm a person of interest on now. And oh yeah, the Lincoln Police Department failed to tell you that me and Bailey do about $100,000 a year business in antiques on eBay, the antique malls in Lincoln, Omaha, all this stuff. They will have you believe that I'm still just a criminal running around. But I don't really need to explain all of that, because as far as I know, I'm not wanted for anything. I'm a person of interest, and I'm not really running from anything. I mean, naturally, I can't go home now because my house has been swarmed, searched, and I'm being looked for. But, and I assume that I have a warrant out of state somewhere now, so that kind of cancels that out. So this has pretty much cost me my life, and I appreciate that from the Lincoln Police Department and the FBI and all those other agencies. But I pray for Sydney. I hope she's found soon. I wish the family the best. I'm sorry that she wasn't with you on Thanksgiving. And that's pretty much all I can say for now. Here's Bailey to tell you whatever she wants to. I'm fixing to step aside and get out of this. Thank you for listening.
Hi, good morning. I'm Bailey, Audrey on Tinder, and a few other names because I have warrants, but this really isn't about me. This is about Sydney, and I'm just kind of want to tell you what I've already told the Lincoln Police more than one time. I met her on a Tuesday. We drove around Lincoln, smoked weed, had a great time. We hit it off. I dropped her off at home, picked her up the next night at her house. We drove around, smoked weed again, made our way to my house where we smoked wax and shatter, and I gave her a 1/4 ounce of some really good weed. I went to take her home, and she asked me to drop her off at a friend's house, so I did so. I gave her my number. We were planning to go to the casino that weekend. I haven't heard from her since. I really don't even know what else to say. I've been seeing all this stuff on the news presses and the magazines and the news, and I guess I just want the family to know that I'm truly sorry and I didn't have anything to do with this, and I hope that Sydney is found very soon. She is a sweet, amazing girl. I don't know. Babe, do you have anything else to say?
I hope also that Sydney's found soon. We wish the family the best. We're sorry you're going through this. As far as all this stuff that the police department is putting in the papers, putting on the news, what they're feeding to the media, what they want the media to know, there's nothing I can do about that. There's nothing she can do about that, because The police department is going to do what suits them best. Yeah, I know that's coming from a criminal, so, you'll believe what you will as far as the police department is concerned. But as far as I'm concerned, what they're chasing us around like dogs, I wish the family the best. I mean, no disrespect to anyone. I wish Sydney the best. But as far as the police department, you.
Yeah.
Eventually, on November 30th, Bailey and Aubrey were arrested at a motel in Branson, Missouri. But they were arrested on different charges. For fraud, they possessed maps, sleeping bags, and hiking shoes that appeared to have been part of their plan to escape to Mexico. So they were out here doing their little fraud, trying to make some money before they ran. They stole some coins from someone, paint, just a lot of different stuff. Unfortunately, in December 4th and 5th, the FBI and local police departments eventually found Sydney's severed remains. That means they cut her up. They chopped her up. Y'all, this lovely, lovely, beautiful, blue-eyed, gorgeous, happy woman that couldn't hurt a fly. They just chopped her up like she was nothing. The devil will come for y'all. Jesus will send you to the depths of hell to burn in a great lake of flames. The police found body parts, sex toys, apparel, and other items were found wrapped inside many 30-gallon trash bags alongside a gravel road approximately 1 hour west of Wilbur. I want to give y'all a warning. This is very graphic, and if you don't want to hear about things that they didn't find of Sydney's body, then just skip 5 seconds. They never found Sydney's upper arm. They never found her heart, her esophagus, tongue, and most of her left lung, and almost all her internal organs. To me, my theory is that they could have sold some of this on the black market. I mean, they seem like a couple that knew how to sell things. And I don't know if they've took a gander into that or not, the police, but that's weird. Those certain things that were missing is weird. Okay, now that was the real bad part of it. Antidepressants and small amounts of alcohol in Sydney's system. 3 months later, Sydney's slit bra and shirt seen in her last Snapchat image were discovered. Bailey had driven around 200 miles on various dirt roads in rural Clay County, Nebraska, found by cell phone pings and records. An autopsy would reveal that Sydney's cause of death was suffocation and that she had bruising that indicated she had fought back with her attacker. Sydney fought for her life, y'all. And when you see the video of Aubrey, you can understand why she didn't have a chance. This man was 200 plus pounds to her 100-pound self. And then also Bailey as well. She was there. Aubrey is saying Bailey had nothing to do with the death of Sydney. These two monsters, their stories change like their underwear. Aubrey made several, sometimes contradicting confessions. Initially confessed from jail that he solely killed Sydney, referencing the law of retaliation. Aubrey proclaimed his wish to be executed for Sydney's killing. In a subsequent confession, he alleged that Sydney died following a third date with Bailey on November 16th. Now that's just fucking bullshit. Let me sip my coffee. His third confession, he claimed that the trio was to participate in a sexual fantasy where he would be with two women and he would choke Sydney, but that Sydney accidentally died as a result. In a fourth confession, he recanted some of his previous confessions, claiming there were no such things as sexual fantasy or threesomes, but maintained that he accidentally still choked Sydney to death. How do you accidentally choke someone? You don't. If you choke them until they die, you're just a murderer. At some point, Aubrey told the FBI that his job was to make movies for special kinds of kinks. He was paid by people who wanted to see these movies, and he used their money to pay subjects such as Sydney, knowing full well that a choking kink can lead to death. This piece of shit is not fooling no one. However, some of Aubrey's confessions seemed credible to authorities, such as when he tipped them about the location where he threw Sydney's smartphone, leading the police to Wilbur's Czech Cemetery, where indeed they found her phone, driver's license, and credit card. Sydney's family sat in the front row of the courtroom, with Bailey's family across the room as Judge Vicky Johnson rehashed the details of the case, which started in 2017. Now, this is going to kind of lay everything out. What really happened than what we knew that happened. Aubrey confessed to murder of Sydney Loofe by strangulation with an electrical cord. The cord was found near Sydney's remains. Defense attorneys attempted to present Sydney's death as an accident during fetish-like sexual activity. You know, I don't understand these defense attorneys and how they can defend these monsters when you know they did this to another human being. I'd be on purpose giving shit over to the other side, trying to help them out. Man, I would act like I'm helping them, my client, but I wouldn't be. Several witnesses from stores came forward, however, with videos from their surveillance cameras. You will see pictures and video surveillance that this motherfucker, before the second date, actually went into Menards, where Sydney was actually on the clock working, and you could see where she passes him. Like, she didn't know who he was. She only knew of Bailey. She had no idea Aubrey existed. Not at this point. And he was buying stuff to use on Sydney. And then there is another surveillance video from Home Depot at like 10 in the morning. Sydney didn't go over there till later in the afternoon. And they were buying a hacksaw, y'all. And gloves. And all this other stuff. That's premeditation. They got your asses, both of y'all, at the store buying this shit before Sydney even came over while Sydney was alive. Premeditation. Aubrey and Bailey were seen at a hotel near Sydney's job and purchasing odd supplies from stores, combined with cell phone records that evidence supported premeditated murder. Prosecutors also presented evidence of the improper disposal of human remains, adding to the charges against Bailey and Aubrey. While Aubrey confessed to the murder, he insisted that Bailey did not participate in the killing. The jury came to an anonymous decision within 2 hours. Their conviction included first-degree murder, improper disposal of human skeletal remains, and conspiracy to commit murder. Aubrey was given the death sentence and became the 12th death row inmate in Nebraska. Bailey's conviction included the same charges. However, she received a life sentence in prison instead of capital punishment. Now, who decided? There was 3 judges that was ruling over this case. Not sure why. I've never heard of a panel of judges. One of the 3 judges ruling over the case stated that Bailey's actions did not meet the requirement of exceptional depravity needed for the death penalty. This 2-1 decision made it impossible to impose the death sentence, as this decision must be unanimous. The panel of the 3 judges presided over the trial on June 11, 2018. Bailey and Aubrey were charged with murder in the first degree and improper disposal of human remains. A day later, the duo made their first court appearance. In July and August, prosecutors expressed their plans to seek capital punishment for Bailey and Aubrey, both of whom pled not guilty. What the fuck? Okay, the prosecution added conspiracy to commit murder to the list of charges pressed against the 2. In June, Aubrey pled. In June 2019, y'all, this shit, drug along for a long-ass time. Aubrey pled guilty to just one of the charges, namely the improper disposal of Sydney's remains. At the end of June, a frustrated Aubrey, y'all, I have this video and it is fucking insane. Aubrey lashed out in court proclaiming Bailey's innocence, just bursted this out in court and cursing everyone before stabbing his neck with what appeared to be a razor blade.
Please be seated.
Bailey is innocent and I curse you all.
Stop recording.
He literally slashed his neck back and forth 3 times, but y'all, the next day he was back in court. The judges and shit were like, no, and we don't care. We don't care that you try to slit your throat and you're a coward and you're trying to not have to deal with this or deal with being in prison. And yeah, he tried to take his own life. Idiot. Okay, this is the evidence that was presented in court. The trial proceeded after Aubrey's injury, and the prosecution presented evidence against Bailey and Aubrey. Clerks from Falls City Grand Weaver Hotel stated that they witnessed Bailey and Aubrey at the hotel weeks before Sydney's disappearance. Surveillance camera records Bailey and Aubrey checking in at a Best Western hotel in Lincoln nearby Sydney's Menards on November 14th at 4 p.m. On November 15th at 11:30 a.m., they shopped at Erdevark Antique Mall buying a folding saw, a weeder, and food grinders. Like, what the fuck were they gonna do with the grinders? Are they trying to make themselves hamburgers or something? That made me feel nauseous when I read that. Shortly after, cell tower data for both suspects' phones showed that they were waiting near Sydney's residence before departure to work. Like, they literally were like around the corner waiting in their car. She went to work, and then they appeared to have followed Sydney to Menards. There, that day's CCTV recordings, Aubrey is seen entering at noon right before Sydney exits the store, with Aubrey looking over his shoulder at her. At Menards, Aubrey purchased an air freshener, cotton cord, Drano, protein bars, and a thermometer and lighters. While Sydney was at work, Home Depot surveillance tapes show the duo buying a foot-long hacksaw, wire snips, drop cloths, and a sharp utility knife with backup blades. Other surveillance recordings display Bailey and Aubrey purchasing a tree saw, 30-gallon trash bags, and a couple gallons of Clorox bleach before and after the murder. Clorox and hefty plastic bags were bought from the Dollar General store a few hours before Sydney's second date and from a grocery store in Wilbur the day after. Premeditated. Staff at both stores testify at the trial. A manager at the Dollar General store confirmed the barcodes for the bleach and plastic bag found near Sydney's remains matched the ones in Bailey and Aubrey's receipts. The manager also presented a receipt dated November 16, 2017, showing Bailey buying a couple of bottles of Drano. At the grocery store, Bailey purchased additional bleach, plastic trash bags, and a trash bin. After these purchases, data from cell phone towers showed that pairs phones traveling to and from the area where Sydney's body remains were found. I mean, they are the most stupid motherfuckers ever. Despite extensive searches, authorities could not locate the cutting tools, especially the hacksaw. However, they had many items they could analyze, such as handcuffs, ropes, dog collar and leash, and sex toys. Sydney's DNA could not be found anywhere on these items. Pieces of electric wire were found scattered near Sydney's remains, which Aubrey admitted he used to strangle her. However, the FBI found Sydney's blood on some apparel, namely a rubber glove and pair of pants. Authorities could not identify who wore the gloves or pants. However, there was limited support for Aubrey's DNA on the surface of the electric wire. Overall, though, the quality of the latent prints were poor, disabling police from definitely attributing them to any person. In July of 2019, 3 women took the stand to allege that Bailey and Aubrey had desire to record victims as they were tortured and killed them before profiting millions from the sales of these videos. Those are called snuff films.
Hi folks, Aubrey Trail here. Few little things I want to talk about. I've been watching all day. I just watched the news. That's why I'm making this. First thing I want to clarify is the news just reported that our contact with the police in Lincoln never took place. Well, let me assure you that it did. Bailey spoke with investigator Cleveland twice. I called on the 22nd. I called the investigator's phone and left messages about 4 times. I called the Lincoln Police Department, the dispatchers, about 8 times. As far as this is not on record, I guarantee you it's on record. It's on Bailey's Tinder phone. It'll be on their phones. I know for a fact she spoke with them twice, at least. I never talked to Celina County Police Department. Never said I did. I spoke with the sergeant at the Falls City, which is Richardson County Police Department, because they went to my ex-wife's house asking for me. So I called them and I informed them where I now live. So if we're going to talk, let's try to get it straight. I mean, the police can say or do what they want, as I can, so you'll believe what you believe. But I've been watching a lot of posts and comments today. So far today, from the comments,
We have apparently murdered this lady. We have apparently put her into human trafficking and sold her. And not only did we do that, we used the money. We went to the casino that weekend and used the money that we sold her for. Bailey didn't drop her at a friend's house. She dropped her off at her drug dealer's house, Bailey's, according to the comments you guys are making. Oh yeah, and don't forget the one that I was in Falls City. I lived in Falls City for a long time. So I have some connection to the Rouleau cult because people heard all about that. And just out of curiosity, is it me, or I guess it's just me and, you know, my criminal mind, how that works? The post we made this morning was deleted from the family's Facebook. Totally understandable. My whole Facebook and Bailey's whole Facebook page was deleted. The video was taken off by the feds or whoever took it off. Just curious, are we not allowed to tell our side of this? Attorneys that we didn't cooperate with the officers in Lincoln. My attorney is Doug Mertz, M-E-R-Z, Falls City, Nebraska. He is not only my attorney, he is the county attorney there. Feel free to contact him. He is the one who represents me in pretty much everything when I need representation. I send him mine and Bailey's statement. By now, the Lincoln Police Department should have those statements. Bailey, like I said, talked to Officer Cleveland twice, told him pretty much everything that we have told you today on the video. Someone also made the comment that Bailey said Sydney was this and was that. Folks, go back and review the video. It can't be changed. It can't be edited. It's already posted. All of the stuff that you're saying was said. It's not been said. You're making, maybe we didn't watch the same video. Maybe you didn't watch the video we made. But a lot of the stuff you're saying that was said is nowhere in that video. Someone posted that I said that Sydney was with us for a week, but Bailey said that she dropped her off at her friend's. Watch the video. That girl's name was Katie that was with us for a week. The Omaha Police Department started questioning about her, saying she was in deep trouble because she was with us, so we took her home on the 22nd. The 22nd is the day that we blew up the Lincoln Police Department's phone, trying to get someone to talk to us. 3 minutes turned into 3 hours that they were supposed to call us back. And of course, again, I'm just a criminal, so you're going to believe none of this, and I guess it's really irrelevant because we've pretty much decided to turn ourselves in and see where this goes. Because now we're seeing on the news the people of Wilbur are terrified because I guess we're guilty by association, which is fine because I've never made an excuse for anything I've done in my life. I do what I do, be it if I'm a thief, I'm a thief, but I'd be goddamned I've never killed anyone in my life. I've never hurt a female in my life, so take that for whatever the hell it's worth. But listen to some of your comments. Listen to what you're saying. Just sit back and read what you're writing. You've got us, you know nothing about us except that I have a criminal history. You use me saying that Bailey and I make a lot of money on antiques as me bragging. I was simply saying it to show you that I'm no longer with the criminal activity and I run a legitimate business now. Yes, I have warrants, but I've had warrants for years. I've got a warrant in Minnesota that's been there for 12 years. The pistol, let's address that so it doesn't look like I was lying. Read the Omaha World Herald ad of, I think it was 3 days ago. It plainly states in there that a warrant was issued because of a firearm found and that the warrant was withdrawn on the 22nd. That's where I got that information, but God forbid I listen to newspapers, I guess, but it seems everyone else does. I don't know what else to say. I guess you'll find out what you find out at the press conference tomorrow. But naturally, Someone commented that we weren't being crucified in the paper, but we would be now, that this has not helped our cause at all. And you may be right. But we don't have a lot to hide. I mean, transparency, we don't have much to tell. Someone wanted to know what friend Bailey dropped Sydney off with. Bailey knew Sydney for 2 days. How the hell does she know? Now she's now she's stoned on drugs, out of her mind. What is she doing messing with a 51-year-old man? Does that really have any relevance of this? And oh yeah, thanks for the comment about I'm not very intelligent and I'm stupid and all this. Appreciate that. But your opinion is your opinion. You know, think what you want, do what you want. The officers in this investigation have the people of Wilbur scared to death. They don't understand. They didn't know that people like us were living next to them. What the hell is people like us? People with criminal histories? Did you check my criminal history? Forgery, bad checks, theft. That's it. I mean, not saying I'm a nice guy. I'm a crook. I'm a thief. Have been all my life. Okay? But I'm not what you're trying to make me out to be. And the last thing, I guess, is you were uncertain as to whether or not it was me and Bailey in the video. It was absolutely us. And she's going to show you some of her tattoos so you know it's her. And someone said her hair is a different color. So what? You know, big deal. And someone said no lawyer out there would say don't turn yourself in. Actually, all the lawyers say don't turn yourself in, don't talk to the police, don't do this, don't do that. But we've pretty much decided to turn ourselves in because we've pretty much been convicted anyway. And if we keep running, I guess maybe it's going to look bad for you. But, hey, we don't want to go to jail. I sure as hell don't want to go to jail on some trumped-up gun charge, but looks like that's what's going to happen. But I'll be goddamned if I'm going to stand here and be accused of doing something to someone you pretty much blatantly said that we murdered this girl. You blatantly said that we've sold her into some kind of trafficking. This is just, it's ridiculous. It's ludicrous.
In one of his confessions, Aubrey's claimed that he recorded Sydney consenting to be choked out, although that tape has never been found, because she didn't. And Aubrey never claimed to have recorded her death. Aubrey went on to recant the claim that he recorded Sydney giving consent to being strangled. Yeah, because he's a piece of shit fucking liar. Sorry, I'm just in the mood to curse a lot today. Later that month, the FBI revealed that while the pair were housed at the Celina County Jail, Aubrey transmitted letters, some ciphers to Bailey informing her of what story to tell the court. The codes were a cipher showing Aubrey taking full responsibility for the murder and painting Bailey as a forced participant in the crime. Also written in the letters were Aubrey's plan to make money by making snuff sex films, alleging that he lied about the original intention for no one to get hurt in the process. Mitigating circumstances. Defense attorneys for Bailey and Aubrey were public defenders. After Aubrey confessed to strangling Sydney, the defense request rested its case on presenting the couple's actions as kinks gone wrong. The defense painted Aubrey as a person with an impoverished and troubled childhood, someone who's assisting the police in bringing justice to Sydney's family. Aubrey's attorney also tried poking holes in the prosecution's case, painting Sydney as a depressed person who used cocaine and citing memes depicting choking and rough sex stored in her iCloud accounts as evidence that Sydney sought out such sexual fantasies. Similarly, Bailey's attorney emphasized Bailey's traumatic childhood and insinuated her role in Sydney's murder as forced as being emotionally manipulated by Aubrey, who was double her age. He was like 50-something, y'all. He's gross. The common denominator in the pair's defense was the wish to avoid the death penalty. Aubrey sought a new trial and requested that it was rejected by Judge Vicky Johnson. Bailey fared better with her request to change venue, which was granted to prejudice. In February 2020, District Judge Julie Smith recused herself as she was instrumental in the recent implementation of Nebraska's execution protocol. In October 2020, a jury convicted Bailey of murder in the first-degree conspiracy to commit murder and improper disposal of human remains. In June 2021, the third judge panel unanimously agreed to sentence Aubrey to death. Appealing the sentence, Aubrey sought to represent himself as any murderer like Ted Bundy, a request that was denied. Thank God we did not have to see that train wreck. In an unrelated case, Bailey and Aubrey were sentenced for defrauding hundreds of thousands of dollars from interstate coin buyers. Aubrey already had a criminal background involving forged checks. Bailey is now an inmate at the Nebraska Correctional Center for Women in York. Aubrey is now on death row at the Tecumseh State Correctional Institution in Tecumseh. Sorry, I said that wrong. And during his sentences, Aubrey read a statement admitting that he killed Sydney, but denying her death was premeditated. Aubrey claimed Sydney was brought to his apartment by Bailey because he wanted to recruit her into his cult. Aubrey said he killed Sydney because he feared she would alert authorities about the lifestyle he was living with Bailey. I had no doubt she would tell people if I let her go, said Aubrey. He's so disgusting. He added, I have done some terrible things in my life. There is no reasonable doubt that this aggravating circumstance against Aubrey Trell justifies an imposition of a sentence of death. Celina County District Judge Vicki Johnson said, Miss Sydney was needlessly mutilated by Aubrey in order to satisfy his intellectual and sexual curiosity. Sydney posed no threat to Aubrey or Bailey, she stated. She was completely harmless and her murder was completely unnecessary. Now about this sex cult, I'm going to read more about in depth in that. He told police that he and Sydney, along with 2 other women, but not Bailey, had engaged in some consensual BDSM, which the woman had paid him $15,000 to film. He said that during that, he had strangled her with an extension cord solely as an erotic act, but that had gotten out of hand, and he accidentally killed her. Afterwards, he said he panicked and chopped up her body and hid it so as not to get caught. Bailey corroborated his story, claiming she had fallen asleep in the living room while Sydney, Aubrey, and the other 2 women engaged in group sex in the bedroom. Perhaps the most damning surveillance footage found them, the day before or the same day earlier that day, buying shit to murder her. In addition to the digital and forensic evidence, the prosecution also had witness testimonies from 3 women who were ordered to remain anonymous. Their testimonies were used to prove that not only was Sydney's murder premeditated, but that Aubrey's motive was beyond bizarre. The women, all in their early 20s, testified that they had first met Bailey through Tinder, just like Sydney. Bailey had introduced them to Aubrey, whom she described as her boyfriend and sugar daddy. They described being given manicures, expensive clothes, cell phones, drugs, and weekly allowances of $150 to $200. In exchange, the woman testified they were expected to engage in group sex with Aubrey and Bailey, whom they had to refer to as daddy and mommy. That made me cringe so hard saying that. That's just... I don't care what type of sexual fantasies you're in, but don't murder somebody. They were also expected to help Aubrey and Bailey carry out their scams and fence stolen property. As times went on, the rules of their relationships began to get more controlling. They were forbidden to be with any other men, had to ask permission to do anything, and were locked inside the couple's homes or a motel room, and were expected to check in via text or phone every 3 hours. But that was only the beginning. The women also testified that Aubrey described himself as a vampire, and that they were now witches who belonged to his cult. They said he claimed to have supernatural powers, like being able to fly and read minds. Sounds like Aubrey needs a psyche eval. The woman said that Aubrey told them they needed to torture and kill someone in order to gain more power, and that he could film it, sell the footage for $1 million, and split the money equally among them. Aubrey even suggested who to take as victims. The women said they left the cult by November 2017, before Bailey lured Sydney in. One of them said Bailey had called her later that month after Sydney's murder and convinced her to travel with them to a casino. She said she got a weird vibe from them at that time. And once she saw that the Lincoln police were trying to contact them, that's when she left the cult for good. She said, I'm done. I'm not getting drug into this bullshit. Though they all said that Aubrey had spoken frequently about killing and dismembering somebody, none of the women said they actually seen Bailey or Aubrey kill anyone. The 3 judges that were on the panel were Judge Vicky Johnson, Darla Idis, and Peter Battalion. Aubrey just kept lying and lying and lying. He said that he killed Sydney on purpose because he thought that she was going to go and run out and tell people about the sex cult. I think maybe Sydney knew about other criminal activities they were doing, and that's one reason why he killed her. But in my opinion, y'all, I really feel like when she got there and she saw this nasty, big, fat 50-year-old guy, and she doesn't like the D, and then they were like all talking about cults and sex and having sex with both of them, and Sydney freaked the fuck out. She was like, get me the fuck out of here, and they weren't letting her leave. And that's when he strangled her to shut her up. The other females got away from the cult, but these women also said that Bailey liked to inflict pain on others. They would talk to them about wanting to murder someone and to make snuff films. What the fuck? The last woman that got away said that they were talking about killing someone else, that the first victim did not go as planned. They weren't planning on this victim having people that loved her, and the woman said Bailey said they messed up on the first one because they chose someone who was missed and cared about too much. And they were talking about Sydney. They stated they needed to be more selective on their next victim. I'm guessing, like someone that doesn't have any family. The aftermath is that they lost this beautiful woman. This family lost their 20-year-old daughter who had so much life to live and was so bright and was so talented that these monsters, just because of their own selfishness, left shambles everywhere they went. Now, the family did make a Facebook page. It's called Now Celebrating Sydney Loofe. The Set Me Free Project and anti-trafficking non-profit organization dedicated a $3,000 scholarship in Sydney's name to be granted to students pursuing careers in criminology, online safety, and social work. I want to kind of give you the background of what some of the family thought about going through all of this. Now, Sydney's family was in limbo waiting for answers in the release of Sydney's body. Dan Loofe said he hopes that his niece's case brings more attention to others missing, and keep praying for the family, he said. Sydney's uncles Dan and Mike, along with their wives Judy and Vicky, arrived to help serve soup. They had like a fundraiser. The building was filled with green shirts, ribbons, and ties, and after dark, the town lit up with green lights. In addition to the soup, people could participate in a silent auction and buy pies or green light bulbs with money going towards the Sydney family. Blackburn Manufacturing in Neely had donated 5,000 feet of plastic for ribbons and printed 2,000 signs with Sydney's picture and information. That signs and flyers reached in Lincoln, Beatrice, and other cities as people took them along on their Thanksgiving travels. Others said they heard the flyers reach as far as Arizona. In a small town like this, everybody knows everybody and you just want to help, she said. The news of Sydney's death hit the town of Neely hard. Just about everyone in town knows her parents, George and Susie Loofe. George has been the principal of the high school for more than 15 years and also served as the football coach. Susie is a special education teacher. Everybody's a neighbor. Everybody's a friend and a family member. They definitely want to help any way they can. George Loofe's brother Dan Loofe said the family hadn't expected this outcome. It's tough, Dan said. At least we have closure. George and Susie really needed it. They wanted her back bad. George said he appreciated the public support. The entire state and beyond tried to help in our minds. A lot of good people exist in the world, he told the Neely News and Leader. Sydney just happened to run into someone that wasn't. The town mourns Sydney Loofe, a good friend and a very sweet girl. My thoughts are that be careful online, be careful in chats, be careful even gaming. You don't know who else is behind that keyboard. And like I said, You love who you love. This had nothing to do with Sydney being LGBTQ+. I feel like these people did prey on her because of that. I'm guessing they just thought, well, she's into girls, so maybe she'll be into boys too. And they used a pretty 20-year-old girl to lure her in. And unfortunately, her life got stolen from her. I want to apologize to the family that you lost someone so special to you. I give my condolences. I want to get Sydney's story out there, but everyone has already done Sydney's story, and I feel like there's not much I can add on to it. Try my best to dig and try to find out who Sydney was, give more to her story, and show more than what others know, but it was so hard, and I just didn't succeed. Please, please stay safe. Sydney did everything correct. The first date, she met in a public place. She made sure it was just her and Bailey. She told people where she was going, who she was with. She did all the steps, y'all. Keep your heart guarded. Make sure you really know someone before you go into their basement. I know that sounds so bad, but sometimes your heart can make your judgment naive. Sydney did nothing wrong. It was not her fault at all. Please stay safe. The next case is going to be about something I don't think I've heard anyone cover before. I am going to try to find as much information as I can and give as much information as I can about the victims, but I know a lot of the information will probably be about this murderer that killed 6 people that day. I love y'all so much. I really mean it. I appreciate y'all so much. Until next time, please like and subscribe. And keep your loved ones very, very close to you. And remember, keep yourself safe. Let someone know where you're going, who the person is you're going with, and what time you should be home. Stay safe.
Please don't put her to death.
Thursday was an emotional day in court, with members of Bailey Boswell's family giving recorded interviews, with Boswell audibly emotional at times, with her parents and others speaking about Bailey's upbringing. Boswell's father was murdered when she was only 1 year old, but actually ended up having a traditional and good childhood in Iowa, with her mother and stepdad turned father who adopted her.
How did she go from a high school star athlete in Leon, Iowa, to being involved with a man twice her age, who is essentially a con man?
Boswell's life went south in college when she dated a man, Freddie, who her parents say sexually and emotionally abused her, as well as coerced her into giving sexual acts for money.
He was pimping her out.
She later met Aubrey Trail, who was also abusive. Her mother, Priscilla, said she never had a good feeling about him.
I couldn't really find anything nice to say, so it's better just to stay away.
The defense also put up Susan Mikulski, an expert in domestic abuse, who said abuse victims will often go from one bad relationship to another.
And it's kind of a double whammy. because if their boundaries have been skewed or blurred, they may not see this coming.
The state was largely quiet, but said that Boswell sought out Trail for money.
What happens is Aubrey Trail becomes that sugar daddy that she wants.
Boswell also has a young daughter, who she is still close with.
Bailey has a 5-year-old daughter, Nala, and you'll hear information that she essentially talks with her or has contact with her almost daily. No more questions.
Boswell's parents say Bailey does not deserve the death penalty, partially because of her little girl.
It'll be back. So I'll have to explain it. How to do it.
Now, if convicted, Boswell would be the only woman on Nebraska death row, and the defense believes that poses an issue, as male death row inmates in Nebraska interact with each other. They believe Boswell would be forced to be isolated in the women's prison in York.
A gun to your head, head to your head, executioner style, and there won't be no trial. Don't you know that you're better off dead? All I see is red.
A neighborhood in shock.
It's a tragedy.
So many people affected in that neighborhood.
Heart-wrenching to see something of this nature because there's obviously no sense to this.
We know full well there's just time. So is it wrong to dance this line?
911, where is your emergency?
Goodenough Avenue. Someone is running around the neighborhood shooting a gun.
Okay, they're on foot or in a car?
I don't know. I'm back in my house. I can't tell. I think they're running on foot.
Okay.
I'm at 2393 Goodenough Avenue.
Okay.
We're down on the floor, you guys.
That was the first warning Copley police received of 51-year-old Michael Hance's rampage that would last about 10 minutes.
All right, the second 911 call was actually made from the resident at 1219 Shockalog, where the suspect was eventually engaged.
911, where is your emergency?
He's over here at 1219 Shockalog. He's shot my window.
1293 Shockalog, window shot out. Anyone, any victims? 1219?
No.
Okay.
Down in the basement block.
Stay in the basement.
Please.
Okay, what's your name?
Melanie, I'm so scared.
Okay, stay in the basement, Melanie. 1293 Shockalog, and your window was shot. Stay in the basement, okay?
It's 1219.
1219, I have that written down. Okay, 1219 Shockalog, stay in your basement. Okay. Just stay in your basement, ma'am. Try to calm down. We'll come and talk to you after we apprehend him, okay?
Are you guys here?
Yeah, they're there. Do not go upstairs, though, ma'am. Do not go upstairs.
Are you guys here?
We're not at your house, no.
Oh my God, I'm on your
Stay. Just stay in your house, okay?
New information now being pieced together to show the path of murder a shooter took in Copley Township. 7 people were killed, including an 11-year-old boy and 2 high school girls.
Just a quick warning, this video will contain explicit content. The video will tell some gruesome details about murder victims and crimes committed by a very disturbed individual. This is not a topic that can be treaded lightly, and as such, viewer discretion is advised.
Hi everyone, it's Lady Curious here with another true crime. This one was a little hard for me to get as much information that I wanted to get about the victims, and I can only actually find a little bit about the murderer. I have missed y'all so much. I am sorry that this is a little bit late. My computer was down for about a week. It was fried and I had to get a new one. Please remember, this video is for educational and documentary purposes only. Do your own research. I've done the best that I could. Today we're going to be talking about the Copley Township, Ohio 10-minute shooting spree that happened August 7th, 2011 through a suburban neighborhood. And my thoughts is the definition of a heinous and haunting event that has ever shook this small town. 7 innocent people dead and 1 injured. Over what, you may ask? An estate disagreement. You heard me right. A estate and a property disagreement. As I always say to my listeners, find the truth, no apologies. Let me go ahead and get this started. Michael E. Hance, they called him Mike, a 51-year-old male, was identified as the gunman in the shooting. He was described as extremely helpful, but also quiet, strange, eccentric, and not well liked by the residents of Copley Township. Acquaintances stated he had compulsions that seemed to hint at a previously undiagnosed mental illness. He graduated from Norton High School in 1978 and was voted the most courteous student in the class. In 1997, Hance contacted police about a man threatening him with a gun when he went out to confront him for vandalizing his truck. He had recently been forced to care for his girlfriend's father, who was suffering from dementia, and lost his job at a copy store after it was closed down. He was also having tense relations between his girlfriend's neighbors, Russ and Gertie Johnson. His neighbors said also that he would actually crawl on top of his van and lay on top of his van for hours. To me, that is weird. I mean, it's hot up there, right? Wouldn't that burn your back or something? I don't know. Weird to me. He is currently survived by a sister who lives in Ohio as well. Many neighbors did not like him. They stated he could be out fixing his van or truck or whatever vehicle, and they'd like wave, being really neighborly, and he would just look at you and not wave back. He just seemed really off and rude to people. And that was Mike. At the time this happened, he was actually living with his girlfriend, Rebecca Dieter. Rebecca was a little younger than now. This story has many people involved, okay? I'm going to go ahead and say who the main suspect is, and that is Michael. I will call him Hance this whole video, so it's just easier to identify him as Hance. He is the shooter, okay? He lived with his girlfriend, Rebecca, and they lived in Rebecca's mother and father's home. This is what happened that day. On August 7th, 2011, a mass shooting occurred in Copley Township, Summit County, Ohio, by 51-year-old Michael E. Hance. 7 people were shot dead before the gunman was shot and killed by a Copley police officer, Ben Campbell. The incident occurred in the area of Shockalog Road and Good Enough Avenue on Sunday, August 7th. Hance had 2 handguns. First, he shot Rebecca in her home while she was getting ready for work, one in the back. Well, this woman is resilient. She did not go down with a fight. She will actually be the only sole survivor of this targeted shooting. She worked at the Veterans Administration as a clerk. They have been together, her and Hance, more than a decade, and she still has no clue what made him just explode. She has thoughts about it, but no one does. He just randomly just went off the deep end. There were no signs. She was 49 at the time at the home they shared. At about 11 a.m., Rebecca managed to call 911 before escaping to the porch of her house and being shot in the back, after which she pretended to be dead. She went to a local hospital after suffering multiple gunshot wounds. The spree continued at an adjacent house where Hance allegedly shot and killed Autumn Johnson, 16 years of age, and her grandparents, Russell Johnson, who was 67, and Gudrun Johnson. They called her Gertie, though. I'm going to call her Gertie. 64, according to Detective Joe Crunch, the first crime scene. Okay, so what happened was after he shot his girlfriend in their house, he ran next door to the Johnsons' house. The Johnsons have been friends of the Dieter family, Rebecca's family, for ages. Okay? He ran next door to their house, and that's when he sees the Johnsons, Gertie and Russ, and he shot them down in their house, dead. Then also, the Johnson's son, Brian Johnson, who was 44, he was in the house. When he figured out what was going on and everything, he actually ran out of the house, and Hance followed him northward, where he was shot dead in a nearby driveway. Okay. What I think happened was Brian knew that his daughter Autumn and her friend were outside in the driveway. It's 2011. They're just chilling, sitting there, the car turned on, listening to music, having their own little personal girl time. And when the shooting started to occur, he thought only of his daughter and thought, I need to get to my daughter. And that's why he ran out of the house to go protect his daughter, because he knew, I got to get her out of harm's way before he sees her and tries to hurt her too. But he didn't make it. He killed him before he could make it. And as he passed the driveway, Hance, after he shot Brian down, and that's where he saw Autumn Johnson, that is Brian's daughter, where Brian was trying to go out there to protect her and didn't make it. He saw Autumn Johnson and her friend that was staying over, came over for the day, Amelia Shamboff. They were just sitting in the car chilling, and he shot them both inside the car. A neighbor said that the windows were like shot out of the car, and they were both only 16 years old and went to Copley High School. And that was the second crime scene. The third crime scene was when he followed Rebecca Dieter, her older brother, Craig Dieter, and her nephew, Scott Dieter, were actually visiting from Kentucky. And they weren't inside their house. They were actually next door over at the Johnsons visiting when this happened. Craig was shot and killed in the Johnsons' home with the Johnsons. When Brian ran out of the house, so did the little boy, Scott Dieter, that was only 11 years old. He ran in the house as well. Hance chased Brian down and shot him in the driveway. And then he shot Autumn and Amelia. And then he gave chase to little Scott. 11 years old, y'all. He chased Scott through a swamp into a house that was like not even 5 houses down from the house they were at. A woman actually took him in, and she hid little Scott, in the basement of her home. But Melanie, the neighbor, tried to deny that Scott was with her before fleeing with her daughters. But Hance found Scott and Deshawn hiding in the basement and killing Scott right in front of Deshawn and leaving Melanie's family alive. As Hance was leaving the house, Officer Ben Campbell, along with former Copley Township policeman Keith Lavery, spotted him. Together they issued commands, which Hance ignored, raising his gun instead, firing shots at them. In response, Campbell and Lavery shot at Hance with rounds from Campbell's rifle, ultimately killing Hance, he said. Authorities said Hance used two handguns in the shooting. We have no idea what triggered this incident whatsoever. Using 2 handguns, including a high-point model JHP .45 caliber pistol, which he bought from Sid Moore's Jewelry in a neighboring Barberton, Ohio 5 days before, and a .357 Magnum 6-shot revolver he bought from the same location in 2005. Hance had grown angry over residents' comments about the state of the property he lived in with his girlfriend, Rebecca. Neighbor Carol E. said Hance had been asked to clean up his property by another resident from Gertie Johnson around a month ago, but had thrown her off his property. Johnson related the encounter to Easelman, explaining that she'd never seen Hance so upset. He said, "Get off my property and don't come back." The dispute apparently dated back to the deaths of Rebecca's parents 2 years ago. Her brother Craig wanted to sell the house, but instead Hance and Rebecca moved in. The shooting began before 11 a.m. on Sunday. Craig and his wife, Beth, had drove Copley from their home in Walton, Kentucky to go over the property dispute and were visiting the Johnsons when the shooting took place. Gilbert Eli, who lives opposite of the Johnsons' home, said he heard gunshots and cries for help as he was about to leave for church. He described finding victims in the driveway of the home, near the garage, and near a vehicle which its windows blown out. The third woman, thought to be Rebecca Dieter, came out of the house and tried to talk to him. Their conversation was ended abruptly when a man followed her out of the house and shot her. Mr. Eli, 76, said, "She was talking to me, and then he come up behind her and shot her. So I figured maybe I'm next." He hid until he could see the gunman had gone. Police arrived on the scene, and Mr. Eli said he heard a second round of shots coming from behind the house. Would have been Hance shooting Brian Johnson at a different house after chasing him down a grassy alley. Detective Joe Prunich told a news conference, "That's one of the puzzles here. Police are trying to determine whether the Johnsons were involved in the property dispute." Authorities yesterday were still trying to work out details of the shooting and a motive for Hance's actions. Comments from police and neighbors helped stitch together a picture of a man prone to conflict and under increasing pressure from neighbors to take his life elsewhere. Hance had worked at a printer's shop in Akron, but quit after a dispute and didn't work again. Easelman said, although Rebecca Dieter urged him to find a job, he was a little slow but often read textbooks on diseases and medical procedures and tried to get others interested. He also made and drank odd health concoctions and claimed he didn't have to work because he was an inventor. He also seemed constantly under stress, trying to deal with possessions of relatives who had recently died. The suburban block features generally well-kept yards with small houses, some better maintained than others. The dispute apparently dated to the death of Rebecca and Craig Dieter's parents a couple years ago. Rebecca Dieter's brother Craig wanted the house sold, but instead Hance and Rebecca Dieter moved in. Robin Hancock, a former caregiver for the Dieters' late parents, called Hance an unpleasant, disliked person whose confrontational style led her to stop working for the couple. "He was quiet and strange," said Hancock, who concurred that there was tension over the ownership of the property in Copley, a township of 11,000 just west of Akron. Gertie Johnson spoke frequently of how odd she found Hance, said Sherry Moore, a lifelong friend who now lives in nearby Wadesworth. The nature of the Johnsons' involvement in the property dispute, other than their dismay at the upkeep of their neighbor's property, was unclear. The investigation. Okay, I kind of just read that verbatim. Like I said, the man was crazy. He was tired of the neighbors barking at him. He didn't want the house sold. I think he felt that he would have nowhere to live, and he had no job. And then he said, "Oh, well, I'm dealing with their estate." And so it was all about Rebecca's parents' estate. And I don't know who this guy thought he was. He was even married to Rebecca. I mean, yeah, they've been together for like a decade, but still, he shouldn't be stepping on toes like Rebecca's brother, Craig. It was just weird. There really wasn't an investigation. It was just, it happened on Sunday. That Monday, they told the press who was the killer. They tried to collect as much evidence as they could to try to piece together what happened. This shook a quiet suburban neighborhood, and it only lasted for 10 minutes. Walked out of his house, shot a lot of people in the next door neighbor's house, and then chased people down the street and shot them. I cannot believe this motherfucker. I'm glad he's gone. But then I'm also like, he should be sitting in prison for the things that he did. And I've looked this case up, and no one is talking about this case on YouTube or true crime anywhere. So I thought maybe I could try to bring some light to this horrible thing. Okay, so they can't tell much more until they do autopsies. I didn't really find anything about the autopsies. They just know that they were gunned down. There's not much detail about that I could find. So also the retired police officer Keith Lavery He was also cleared and of the shooting because he shot at Hance as well. It was said that no words can adequately express the loss experienced by the families of the victims and community at large. The police chief, Michael Muir, he described the community as having a very low violent crime rate. Since Hance had no criminal record, he easily cleared a federal background check and took immediate possession of a .45 caliber weapon. Police say federal authorities have been tracing 2 handguns linked to Hance. East Ohio Pawn Shop said it sold a handgun last week to Hance. Owner Tom Sidmore and Sidmore Jury of Barberton, nothing seemed unusual about Hance when he came into the store 5 days before Sunday's rampage. Police haven't said why they think Hance began killing on that Sunday. They really do believe. A lot of people believe that it was because he was scared of losing his house and he wanted to fight over his girlfriend's late parents' will, practically. That really he had nothing to do with. He needed to stay out of that business. And unfortunately, all these people were murdered because of this piece of shit, worthless human. The police looked back on some old police reports that kind of painted the picture of how Michael Hance's mental health was. On May 30th of 2009, 2 years prior, the police went to the home where Hance had become very paranoid about the number of jet contrails in the sky and felt it necessary to notify the authorities about it, aka chemtrails. Also, remember Hancock, the caretaker? She quit, like I said before, because of the unusual weird behavior of Hance. And she's like, F this, I am leaving. This guy's weird. And get this crap. 2 weeks prior to this, it was premeditated because he actually bought the caliber handgun and then went to the shooting range, y'all. And the shooting range said he didn't seem to know how to shoot the gun and they had to teach him how to shoot it. They also searched Hance's girlfriend's home where Hance lived. And they found all these really weird notes of like weird rambling notes that seemed like he was obsessed with cancer and trying to cure cancer. They really felt like Hance had a delusional disorder, but was never diagnosed or never went to get help for it. He was very strange. And a lot of these issues, if you ever feel like someone is acting weird or off of normal, you might want to say something to somebody, because if this man might have got some mental health treatment, maybe this wouldn't have happened. That's my opinion. But this man is like he snapped. The aftermath. Residents held a candlelight vigil Sunday evening. Neighbors said residents were shocked and baffled by the shooting and would likely never get a full explanation. Robin Hancock came to the police station in this northeast Ohio community on Monday to hear updates on the slayings that left 8 dead and 1 injured. That's including Hance. Melanie Akeley will never forget the look in Michael Hance's eyes when he burst into her home a year ago. Burst into her home and turned her world upside down. He was a monster, she said. Akeley said she has changed virtually everything about her life, with one notable exception. Since the day Hance fatally shot 7 people in their Copley neighborhood, his final victim, 11-year-old Scott Dieter, was killed in the basement of her home, where he sought refuge with her and her children. I will never relive every detail of that day to anyone but Scott's mother, Bagley said. I think I owe her that. I think every mother would want to know the final minutes of her child's life. I want her to know I did my best, but I understand she's not ready yet. I can't imagine what she is going through, losing both her husband and son all in the same day. That must be devastating. But whether it's tomorrow or 10 years from now, I'm willing to talk to her. It's why I never changed my phone number. Little else about Bagley's life has gone unaltered since last August. She moved to a home less than a mile away from the shooting scene, in a more secluded area with fewer neighbors. The residence includes a high-tech alarm system. Those changes help her sleep through the night. I will never forget every second and every minute of that day, no matter how hard I try, Bagley said. She relives how she tried to hide Scott and her children behind the furnace. After Hance broke into the basement, he put a gun to her head. Bagley denied Scott was with her. She then tried to escape while holding her 1- and 3-year-old daughters, and instructed her son and Scott to follow her up the stairs to safety as Hance searched the basement. Bagley said Scott, who must have been paralyzed with fear, did not follow, nor did her son Deshaun, who later told his mom that someone had to stay with him by the time Bagley reached the 3rd step. She heard the gunshot. She didn't want to know what happened, but she knew. Scott died just minutes after Hance had killed his father, Craig Dieter of Kentucky. The family had been visiting relatives in Copley. After the shooting, Bagley moved out of the house and into a hotel. She wouldn't let employees come in to clean her room. Instead, she would ask for clean towels and sheets and do her own housekeeping. When people donated food, the deliveries went through one person, someone she knew. She's suspicious of almost everyone. She said that before the shooting, she stayed home a lot. I wasn't much for going out to clubs and always stayed in the house on New Year's Eve. But when this happened, I realized you aren't even safe in your own home, she said. There are crazy people everywhere. Her mother asked her to move back into the home they shared at the time of the shooting. Bagley's bedroom was in the basement. She told me to take another bedroom, Bagley said. I already couldn't sleep. I knew I would never be able to sleep in that house again. I did not go back. I did go back, but only to get my things. I didn't take everything because it just wasn't worth it. I couldn't stay there too long, Bagley said. Her son went back to home, but gradually. The therapist told me not to pressure him, she said. At first, he would stay outside and play with the dog or go in only to get a drink of water. When he did work his way into the house, he wouldn't go upstairs or downstairs. Then one day he told me he had to do it for himself. He went downstairs, walked through the basement quickly, and came back up. He's never been back inside the house. The house now sits empty. Bagley's mother has moved out. Bagley said her 10-year-old son is doing much better. Deshaun is doing great. He no longer has nightmares. His therapy ended early this year, his mother said. He doesn't talk about the shooting. He told the counselor that he didn't want to upset me. Bagley said, Destiny, her 4-year-old daughter, occasionally will ask something like, remember that man that tried to hurt us and killed the little boy? And I have to remind her that he will not be able to harm us, anybody else, because the police shot him. My brother took her over to the dead man in the driveway to reassure he couldn't hurt anyone anymore. Bagley tried to shield her children from news accounts of the recent shootings in a Colorado movie theater. I turned the television off before they could see it. They don't need to be reminded of that day. As for herself, Bagley said she is doing better. She says she started having nightmares again in June, after a television crew asked her to go over every detail of the incident. She refused. They also asked if my son could go over the whole thing, too. She said, absolutely not. I'm not putting him through that again. Bagley is engaged and acknowledges she has clung to her fiancé since the shooting. He's a good man. He has been there for me ever since it happened, she said. She credits him for finding a top-of-the-line alarm system, something that will go off at the sound of glass shattering, recalling that Hance got into her former home by breaking glass in the side door and reaching in to unlock it. I had to find a place that I feel safe, she said, a place to protect my kids better and to help them forget the past and make new memories. She said people asked why she wouldn't tell Hance where the boy was hiding. She has been accused of putting her own kids' lives in jeopardy. It's a mother's instinct to protect, Until you are a mother or a parent, you wouldn't understand, she said. I would hope that if given a similar circumstance that someone would do the same thing for my children, to at least try to protect them. She has spent a lot of time second guessing. What if I had hidden the boy better, under a pile of clothes or toys or behind something, she asked. We went to the basement because it was dark. I thought it would be too dark to see anything or anybody, but Hans had a flashlight. Bagley said there's always a lot of blame to go around after the fact. It's hard to think clearly when you are afraid, but I hope no one ever must go through anything frightening and gruesome as that day. She said it's still hard to accept that Scott Dieter died on her watch. She said her guardian angel that day must have been her father, who died 5 years ago. My dad used to say, bullets don't have no names on them. That man could have shot any of us, but for some reason, he really had it out for that little boy. What could they have said to this man to make him want to hunt down and kill all of them? A neighbor stated. No one will ever know the real truth of what was going through his mind and why. Tammy Simon, who was at the vigil, said, I just want peace for the family. I don't need to understand why or anything. I have played the 911 calls for you. The 911 calls started at 10:55 a.m. to 11:06 a.m. Because first it was Rebecca Dieter that called. You'll hear her. And then that was in the beginning of the video. And then the second one was actually Melanie Bagley. In Rebecca's first interview with the media since the rampage, she spoke in a very soft and thoughtful voice for over 75 minutes. She described what she remembers about the shootings and how she is recovering, both physically and psychologically. She grabbed her landline telephone and walked out to her porch after hearing what Scott Dieter, who would be killed, had said. I'm on the phone with the police, Dieter recalled. I kept saying, he's here. She believes that Hans ran into the house and up the stairs thinking she was still in the shower and looking to kill her. Then she said Hans came running out the door and saw her. He said, Becky? Like a question. Like, oh my God, she got away, she said. Hans ran across the porch towards her, closing to within 3 feet. I looked at him and I looked down, and he had a gun pointed at me, she said. I dropped the phone at that time, and I obviously turned. He was pointing the gun at my chest, but he then hit me in the back. She said she remembers immediately pain and everything going very slowly and not having any control over her body, like I was flying off the porch. She caught a glimpse of Hans's face, and it was completely emotionless. A single hollow point bullet had entered her back, hit the edge of her spinal column, without causing permanent spinal cord damage, and deflected through her left lung. It exited through her left shoulder, shattering bone. Rebecca landed on the driveway, on her left side, the side where she was wounded. I did realize I was still alive, and I saw his feet, she said. Rebecca closed her eyes, so he sort of would think I was dead. She lay on her back and was having great difficulty breathing, and she had 2 collapsed lungs, one struck by the bullet and the other punctured by a rib fracture in her fall. She rolled over and tried to hold herself up as breathing got increasingly difficult. I remember thinking, if someone doesn't come quickly, I will die. Copley Township Fire Department personnel arrived and began treating her. They saved my life, she said. Rebecca undergone 3 operations since the shooting, the first to try to repair her shoulder a few days after the shooting, the second in November to replace the joint with artificial shoulder, and the third in late July on her left lung because of continuing breathing difficulties. She has suffered pneumonia and respiratory failure during the year-long ordeal. Recently, she had been using portable oxygen to help her breathe, but hopes to be off of it shortly. She has limited mobility of her left side and is not able to lift her left arm much because her rotator cuff was destroyed in the shooting. An employee of the federal agency Rebecca had been unable to go back to work yet, but hopes to resume soon. This was a year after the shooting. Rebecca said the actions of Hance that day were totally out of character. There was nothing in his behavior that indicated he was planning such an attack. She called it completely unfathomable that the person she spent 22 years with would have or could have actually do something like that. Never once in our time together did I ever fear him. She believed that for some unknown reason, he decided to kill everyone in her immediate family and extended family. That day, the Dieters were planning to go to a family reunion in Pennsylvania. She understands that Hance had packed her car with weapons and survival equipment. When it was decided the group would travel to Pennsylvania in her brother's Craig's car, Hance decided to shoot everyone before they could leave the reunion. She said she is glad police killed Hance because he obviously lost his mind. Christina Kraft began working with Rebecca, admitted to the hospital after the shooting. They continued to meet twice a week. Kraft, a psychologist, said she had been treating Rebecca for PTSD. A year after, truth be told, she is still much better than I've ever imagined, but it will be an ongoing process to help Rebecca work through issues relating to the shootings. With PTSD, what I say is memories control the patient. And while we are never able to take the memories away, the goal of treatment of PTSD is for any patient with PTSD to control memories, she said. Right now, there are quite a few memories that are controlling Rebecca. Rebecca said she often thinks that if she had done anything differently, perhaps she could have stopped Hance. Kraft reassures her constantly that there was nothing she could have done to change things. Absolutely under no circumstance did you do anything that led to what happened. Kraft said Rebecca during the interview. Right, Rebecca replied. He lost his mind. Kraft said, part of PTSD is re-experiencing over and over again. The guilt, the anxiety, the avoidance. Rebecca has been journaling and recently started taking a self-defense class as part of her therapy. She said she had been numb for much of the year after the shooting, but has begun to feel the deep pain associated with such an incident and the loss of so many family members and friends. We lost many great people that day, she said. The loss is almost exponential, and that all of these people were good, special people. Rebecca said there were no issues within the family over the estate of her parents, as she had begun reporting at the time of the shooting. Her mother, Helen, had died in 2008, and her father, Wayne, died the next year. Becky said both of her siblings want to remain in the family house, where she had lived since the age of 8. She had started grief counseling over the loss of her parents in 2011. She said she was grateful her parents were gone when the shootings happened. It is such a horrible tragedy, and I believe they were in heaven greeting everyone we lost that day. Rebecca said she is also very thankful to her sister and her brother-in-law, whom she lives in Northeast Ohio. They have helped and supported her throughout the ordeal. She is thankful as well to the medical teams and the hospital, and the Copley Police and the fire departments, the Victim Assistance Program, and the community for their support. She met with Copley Police Officer Ben Campbell to thank him during that year. Campbell is the officer who shot Hance. In March, just before what would have been Scott and Craig's birthdays, she and Kraft visited a memorial bench, Copley Circle, where they placed balloons and cards and read prayers and poems. I want to thank everyone who has been praying for us, sending us positive energy and good karma, Rebecca said. I believe that is why I am here today, and that I continue to pray all of the families affected, and I hope others will continue to do so. The losses that occurred a year ago affected the entire region, he said. They were leaders in their communities, with the Boy Scouts and their churches, she said. It affected anyone who was from around the area because this tragedy happened here, which means it could have happened to anyone, anywhere. That is Rebecca's story. of being the lone survivor of a horrible massacre. I want to go over everybody, all of the victims. I don't have much to say about each person, but I do have who they were and some little things about each person. Because we want to remember all these innocent people. First, Gudrun Gertie Johnson was 64. She was the neighbor of Hans, who complained to Hans about cleaning up his property. A friend of the Johnson said Gertie could always make people laugh, and she was always telling stories about her family. She really loved her family. Gertie was very loving and kind and loads of fun to be around. Gertie was originally from Germany and met her husband when he was in the military. She was a receptionist at a furniture store for 2 decades. And Russell Johnson, they called him Russ, was 67, and he was also a neighbor of Hans, and he was Gertie's husband. Russ Johnson was a devoted father who helped coach their children in sports, took them camping, and rode motorbikes with them. He had undergone heart surgeries in recent years and was careful about his health. He was eating healthy and exercising, and then just a tragedy like this happens. Russ ran a upholstery business behind his house. Russ and Gertie were together for 48 years when this tragedy happened to them. Brian Johnson was Russ and Gertie's son. He was 44. He had one child, Autumn. I don't really know a whole bunch about Brian. All the pictures, you can see that he seems to love his family and to love his life and to love his daughter. They really loved going to BMX motorbikes and races and things like that every Tuesday. And they were part of the BMX motorbike family. Autumn Johnson was the one that was in competitions. She was only 16, and she just seemed like the sweetest girl. She had a boyfriend at the time. There are pictures of her and her boyfriend that you will see that also have like little things that she would write on Facebook. She was really into social media, and she really loved doing sport. She was tomboyish, but then she loved to get dolled up, and she loved music. She loved competition, and you'll see that in her photos. Amelia Shambaugh, that was Autumn's friend, that was over at her house at the time. She was 16. Amelia was born June 14th, 1995. She had a strong, happy, and supportive family life. She was dedicated to sharing high ideals that created her wonderful, warm personality. She radiated strong inner qualities and was always so mature in her thinking and actions. She loved her sister, Lindsay, and her animals, Kaylee, Mia, and Millie. She was very artistic and loved woodworking. She had a big heart and giving soul. Her outlook on life was positive and optimistic. She loved to have fun, and her laughter was contagious. She had many friends that loved her. She left behind her mother, Linda, and her father, Anthony, and her sister, Lindsay, and many more family members, and also her 3 pets. Craig Dieter was the older brother of Rebecca. He was 51. He was married. He had an only child, and that would be Scott. They were visiting from Kentucky at the time, so they had a whole other life in a different state. He was a United States Army captain veteran. He was an engineer that worked for a company called Rockton. He seemed like he loved life, and a lot of pictures that I saw of Craig, he loved boating and fishing and just loved to be around the people he loved. Scott Dieter was Craig Dieter's son. He was 11 years old. A lot of neighbors remember Scott being such a sweet boy and had nice parents. I don't really have a lot about Scott. Probably just a typical boy. I'm sure he liked video games and loved getting dirty, and but that's just speculation. There's really not much that I found out about Scott, to be honest. Not many photos of him either. I wish I knew more. He seemed just to be a happy boy, and he loved his dad. We have guns in my house. I am a person that believes in the Second Amendment. And I'm telling you, if someone came into my house, they'd be dead. So I just wish that they had the chance to protect themselves. A chance. I mean, you had 2 veterans in the house. It's not their fault. It happened so quick, y'all. Like, it was literally, let me shoot my girlfriend on the porch of her house, and then he walked right next door, opened the door, and just shot at people. That's just insane to me. You could just be sitting in your house, and because you don't have your door locked, or you think, oh, I'm in a small town, I'm safe, I don't need to lock my doors, my family are coming in and out, boom, someone just walk in. But it sucks that they knew him. The last person they saw was this piece of shit holding a gun and just shooting them. Like, no big deal. Like, he was cut off from reality, is all I can say. And then the fact, the chase after 11-year-old boy after he shot all these people is insane. I am so happy that the family that he went in to get refuge is okay, and that Hans didn't just murder them all too. And this girl did her best. She put her life on the line to try to protect this little boy. And she, till this day, feels like she didn't do enough, and you just did what you could do. You do what you can do. Be a good neighbor. Protect. You see someone else's child in danger. Protect them. Stand up. There were never any type of court dates because he was killed. And he's where he belongs, in a grave. This man just wanted to annihilate an entire family. 2 families. 2 families. That's what he tried to do. I want to tell the members of the family that have survived and that are left. I'm very sorry that this happened to your family, and I will be praying for your healing. And I am happy that I was able to tell their story a little bit, to get their names and what happened to them out there a little bit where their memories won't be lost. And this was a serious tragedy, and my heart is with y'all. That's the end of this case. I know I might have said some information on repeat, and I'm sorry about that, but trying to get this information in order was madness, is all I can say. I love y'all very much. See y'all in the next one. Please like and subscribe if you want to hear more. If you have any case suggestions, please go onto my website. It will be down below, curiousravenProductionsLLC.com. There is a form that you can fill out there if you want me to research a case and bring some light to it. And you can also leave it in the comments. Please go follow me on Instagram at ladycurious.yt. Thank y'all so much. Love y'all so much. Please stay safe.
The killer's motive is still a mystery.
We have no idea what prompted this incident whatsoever.
But police say Hans wasn't done killing innocent people. He chased down Brian Johnson, Autumn's father, for 500 yards before gunning him down, and then went after 11-year-old Scott Dieter, Rebecca's nephew from Kentucky. A neighbor allowed the terrified boy into her Shockalak Road home to seek refuge and called 911. Tonight, the Dieter family released this statement.
That our family has suffered a loss too deep for words. Please respect our privacy while we grieve for all those affected by this tragedy. Thank you to all, and continue to pray for us.
Campbell spoke like a true hero.
My name's on a lot of these awards, but everybody on my department and the community that day all had a role to play, and I was only one small part of it.
Officer Campbell was first on the scene and knew he couldn't wait for backup. He had to take action.
He knew he was in a vulnerable position. He knew he was at risk, but he kept going. And he told me that he felt very unsettled. But then when the shooter emerged from behind the tree and he saw him, even though he was facing an armed man at that point in time, he felt a little bit of calm came over him because at least he knew where the shooter was.
Campbell was faced with a split-second decision. He fired 3 shots at the gunman, killing him.
From prior active shootings, we discovered that if the officer waits for backup, then, more people are going to be killed. So at that point, I need to go in just like we've trained. I need to go toward the bullet, so to speak.
Campbell said now he can go back to being just another police officer. a job he loves.
From home, I ain't got anybody I like to drink.